Today we're upgrading my Range Rover Sport from this to this. We're going to install a modern head unit, a subwoofer amplifier for the Logic 7 subwoofers, and keep the 4x4 display screen. Okay, so before we get started, let's take a look at what the kits include. This is the FK-853-6 fitting kit for a Range Rover Sport, doubled in with Logic 7 screen retention. Shows the parts that are included. Let's take a look. So we have our main harness here, 29-712, which has steering wheel controls and screen retention harness, which includes a fiber optic cable and quick overview of how it connects and what you need to do with the original head unit. We have an antenna adapter, 21-123. We chose a Pioneer adapter because we're putting a Pioneer head unit in for the steering wheel controls, but you could also get the universal patch lead instead, or whichever one matches your radio. We have the amplifier bypass harness, since the head unit will be providing the amplifier for all the main speakers. That's 20-314 for Logic 7. There's another connection diagram here. We have the bezel panel, which is where the head unit will mount. And we have the mounting cage, a couple foam panels, and some other parts of the mounting hardware for the head unit. Now the other kit we have to retain the subwoofers is this one. It's the AK LR01, which is Range Rover Sport. But what this is a subwoofer amplifier. We got a wake-up wire for the amplifier. We got a T-harness to power the amplifier. So this sits between the original amplifier and the car's harness and provides positive and negative that will go to the new amplifier. And it comes with RCA cables to connect the amplifier to the head unit subwoofer out. You can also optionally get the remote for the amplifier, which lets you control the subwoofer levels without going to wherever you mount this. And the amplifier right here, which is very compact. Got our inputs and outputs, other inputs and outputs, and we'll go over this later. Now the head unit we're using is a Pioneer, and I've made a harness here ahead of time with the universal adapter that adapts the Pioneer connector to the ISO style connectors for audio and power and all those things. So this should all connect this into those two harnesses we saw earlier, the amplifier bypass and the steering wheel controls. And you can buy these types of adapters for head units. In Car Tec sells some. This was made with the universal kit. And yeah, I've T-tapped the amplifier wake signal wire, which goes into this harness, but also needs to go to the subwoofer. So that's why this is here already. Some head units will come with this type of plug on the head unit. So you would just plug in the harnesses that come with the kit and you're good to go. So I'm gonna start here on the passenger seat, and I'm gonna be unbolting the rear bolts. And the reason I'm doing this now is so that I don't have to turn the ignition on while I'm working on the radio and things are unplugged. So let's get this out. There's one cover here, one cover here. Pry them out. There's two clips on this one. There we go. She's on there. Yeah, two on one side, two on the other. They snap into these metal brackets. And then right here we have on the rear, one bolt here, and one bolt here. These are T50 Torx right here. And we may need to use extensions. Mine are pretty easy to take out because I've taken them out before. If you've watched the series, all the seats came out of this when we first got it. All right, so that is the rear. It's loose. Let's move the seat back towards the rear so we can access the fronts. And we'll be working down here a little later with the connections at the amplifier. Pop these caps off. Separate it from the outer panel here, and then it comes out inward. And we had a bolt right there. This one has 2 clips here, and this one just has the one. This way. I'm going to leave this seat angled forward here so I can tip it back so we can run wires from up there into the area where the amplifier is. And actually, while we're here, we can pull this out. Oops. That's all on with 4 clips. And this is where we'll remove the connector for the seat later on when we get ready to tip it back. So I removed these 2 bolts here and here. So now the front's loose. There's actually some slack on this cable, so we may not need to unplug it, but if we do, it's an 8mm here that locks in the connectors. That are all the connectors for the seat. So then we tip it back. Right here, you can see the amplifier. And then back here, there's a split in the carpet, which is where we're gonna run the wires down from the dash into this area. So if we need to move the seat back further, I'll probably remove this harness, but we'll get to that a little later. Our first step is to remove this trim here. So this is all one piece. We're gonna get in here by prying gently or under here. Sounds like it popped out. There's a couple clips across, so that's out here. No, one of the clips fell out. We've got these little metal catches on them. That's this side off, and then we have a couple up top too. There should be 2 more clips up here. I'm gonna try to rip those out. There we go, 1 and 2. Oh, perfect. So as you can see, this clip here came off. When it fell down, it actually came back out of the center console, which is good, because it looks like it shot down that way. But we can just snap that back in, and it's ready to go back in later on. Now in here we have our head unit. So these are all 3 pieces. We're not taking anything out yet because we need to take out the center console part, but let's see, these are T20s, so I'm gonna grab those. We are gonna wanna get into the center console anyway for wiring and stuff. These are little short screws with a little point. Yeah, so we're gonna have to take this top panel off. It's the same screws also. Pull that forward. You got 1 connector back here. Take that off. Just push this button to release it. Put that aside here. This has to come forward with the AC controls, so we'll get to that in just a moment. So our next step is going to be to remove the center console part, this upper panel here. Now to remove this section here, we're going to remove these 2 screws on either side right there. These are just Phillips. So these are a little longer. We'll remember because they're not T20s. And now what we do, well, we're going to put this in neutral because we got to put this back. That should pull straight up. Oh, I hit myself in the face. Ow. Okay, well, it's in there pretty strong. Ow. Whew, my chin. And then what we do is we're going to open the glove box and we're going to pull back here to raise it. I'm going to try to release it here. Gotta raise it up from here, these sides, and then we'll lift it up and out. And that's why we have this in neutral, so it can slide up and out. But you just have to get that loose here. It's pretty stuck. Okay. Okay. I pulled up a little farther faster than I expected, but we can pivot and slide this out. And then we have to disconnect everything under there. So there's a bunch of connectors under here. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's the ashtray plus the light. Got a bunch of things here. So maybe I can put this back into park. Turn the key off. There we go. Right here, there's a bunch of connectors, so I'm going to undo those. I got a connector that doesn't want to come free here. Okay. All right, so you put this aside too. Oh, here, let me show you. So right here we have cigarette lighter, presumably LED for it. We've got one connector here, here, and here for the gear shift. We've got the module for the ride height and 4x4 stuff. So it's all there. And we got a bunch of coins in here. Now that we have the center console out, or the top panel of it out anyway, here we have two more T20s, and then same thing on the other side, right there. So we're gonna undo those. Go. And now should be able to pull this out. This comes forward, this comes forward, and there we go. Now I have to reach in and disconnect this, because there's a fiber optic cable here. Okay, there we go. Oh, and then an antenna connector over here. Okay, so we have, that goes to our top panel up here. We have fiber optic right here. It's got a little catch on the left side to release it. These have the top button, you gotta wiggle it out. And then the antenna has a little release on the top as well, and that pulls back. I'm actually gonna pull this out too, since we're gonna be working back here for a little while. See, 1, 2, 3, 4. The release on this one is on the bottom, and all the others are on the top. Now we gotta go work on this, because to retain the information display here, we need to retain part of this module in the car. So let's go work on that. So now we have to separate the control module from this whole unit. So to do that, I'm gonna follow the instructions and remove these 4 screws. Okay, now we need to remove these top screws to remove the front panel. We need to remove this as well. I should start with that first. Oh, okay. So we're gonna have to undo these ribbon cables, this ribbon cable. Just pull it back. Let's remove the front panel now too. Got the screws off the top. I think the bottom just snaps in, so let's see. There we go, that comes off here carefully. They'll slide out. Get our front panel off. So there may be another version that has screws on the bottom. This one only had screws on the top, but you can actually see where the bottom screws would go. So now we have to undo the screws on the PCB. I think this is the heat sink, so we're going to undo those as well. What we're doing now is removing the PCB from this assembly. Let's see, we've got one screw here, one screw here, one screw here. Just gonna undo those. These have little flares on them. Now right here, there's a little key. Right there, we want to turn that so we can release the PCB. That prevents it from sliding up and out, but what we have to do is free it. I recommend using some flat pliers to twist the key rather than pushing it. a screw by the antenna connector right here also. That should come up. Wiggle it off that key, which is just a metal tab that bends in place. And now we make sure this stays in place. There's a plastic sheet here to insulate the circuit board from the metal. Now I have to work on the front. And there's 3 screws here, I think. Those 3 screws retain that tray in place where the circuit board mounts. So we're gonna take these off as well. Oh, and then there's 2 screws back here that secure the tray to the rest of the assembly. And then it slides up and out. Careful with this ribbon cable. And we can move this out of the way. And actually right here you can see the CD changer. That's pretty cool. And now what we're doing is we're putting the circuit board back in place. Make sure that's straight up and down. A bit easier to put together. So now we can put our heatsink screws back on. Got our antenna screw here. You can decide if you want to lock that back in place. Just do a slight turn, I guess. And then I'm gonna put the lid back on. It snaps down on these 2. Oh, but you have to make sure that your catch at the front is in. So these 2 have to slide forward. There we go. And then this can slide down and snap on the sides. And you can put the 4 screws back in. All right. And that's our module for the info screen. Back together. Now we're going to start working on running the wires that are going to go from the amp up to the new head unit and all that harness. So we've got the subwoofer audio wire. We're going to put the right angles at the head unit so it'll stick out less. We've got the amplifier wake wire, and we have the amplifier bypass cable. So this end here is going to go to the head unit side, the new harness, and then this is going to go by the amplifier. So it's going to go to the harness in the car that goes to all the speakers, plus this one. So the way we're going to run these is it's actually going to come up in this area from underneath there. There's like a little gap down here. We'll see in a second when I tip the seat back, and we're going to feed those wires up into there. So this harness here, we've got this long run that's going to go into the dash, and this is going to stay at the bottom there. And then this is the same thing, it's just a signal wire. That apart, this side's going to go up towards the top. The way I'm going to do this is I have this long zip tie. I'm going to feed it in. Let's see, I'm going to feed it in this way, and that way I can pull all the ends together out through the middle, and then I can route them in there. So let's tip this back. You can see there's like a gap right here. So I'm going to use that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed this in through here if I can. It turns out there isn't enough clearance to go through this area, but we'll use the same method further forward instead. Another option is to reach over here, feed it up, and we're going to reach in down there through that gap by the vents and pull it through. So we're going to try that and see if that works better. Feed that down in here, get that, a little bit of tape on this. I'm going to receive it in here. Got to jiggle it through. There it is. That's good. I'm going to pull more of it in. Now we will have to figure out how to tuck this in here. Because we're gonna run those in there. But first I'm gonna run the other wires up. All right, these stay down here. Then I'm gonna have to run along this as well. I wanna make sure I have enough length here. Okay, that should be good. Here we go. Let those run. They're all tucked in here and they pop out right here, which is what we want. And the way this is set up, when the harnesses are down here and the seat comes down, the wires won't get pinched. They'll just fit under this bar here. Let this come out to the front here. In the meantime, okay, that can come down. All right, that is our wiring there. Okay, so now what we have to do is start the wiring. So we've run this wiring in, which is great. We've got a good start already. And what we're gonna do now is start wiring a few other things. So there's one thing I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna do another T-tap into here because it's gonna be a remote on, and we need one of these as well for the antenna. So I've put a similar T-tap in, and I'm gonna just tap into here. That way it'll all be one unit that stays in the car. This will go to the antenna side, and this will go to the head unit side. Just get the T-tap, line that on here, crimp it down. And what this does is the head unit sends the same signal to the antenna wake, which powers it on. And what that means is that when the head unit turns on, it also turns on the antenna amplifier, which means that the antenna will work properly for the radio. So I can just pop this in, and that is wired up. So this will connect to the radio harness, take the wake signal to the subwoofer down there, and to the antenna amplifier in the back through this adapter. So if you remember, we made this shrunken down version of the control module for the display up here. So this has to get tucked in somewhere. Unfortunately, it can't fit where it used to because the new head unit's gonna go there. So I'm actually gonna slot it in down this way. There's like a void down there, and that's where it's gonna go. So I'm gonna slide it down this way, like that for now. And I'm gonna pull this wire down so that it can plug in here. The smaller connector of the two. So that's snapped in. Now normally this would plug into it as well, but what we're gonna do for this is plug in the harness. So our steering wheel control harness here is gonna be this plug that connects there. So it'll only fit one way. Snap it in, and that is good to go. So now on this, we've got a relay in here you don't have to worry about. We've got the steering wheel control decoder. Since I'm using a Pioneer, I'm going to pull that adapter out now, right here. But you get the one that matches the type of radio you're going to use. And that is going to go into this plug right here. So snapped in here. And then we have this side, which goes into that module. In fact, let me slot this up here. This side finishes the piggyback setup for the module. We're gonna plug it in down here. There we go. So this looks a little messy, but it will look better in a bit. So I'm gonna put these off to the side because there's another connection here we'll have to make. This is gonna go up on the side of the radio for the harness. That's gonna pop into the head unit connector, and actually this antenna adapter can live up here as well. And while we're here, I guess we could just grab this antenna plug and connect it here. It'll only fit one way. That's in. This will be able to get taped out of the way if we need to. And this will go into the head unit. So we're actually gonna have some space in here on either side of the head unit where we can attach stuff, tuck things out of the way if we need. Now, another thing we need for that module is the fiber optic connector, but this can't stretch down to there. So that's why we have this here, which is an extension. You need to be careful with fiber optics because you can't bend them tightly. They need to have a pretty smooth curve, since after all it is glass. So this right here is gonna go into this side. So this one to here, snaps in there. And then this, we'll need to work out how to run down into that port down here. So maybe we'll start with the bottom side. It's gonna go like this, down through here, to the port, like that. Loop back here. Potentially if off to the side, we'll have to adjust as needed and connect it right here. So this will most likely need to tuck in to the side of the head unit like this. I think that will be good. This is just for now. Should hold it out of the way enough with a good smooth curve connecting them. So that should do the trick. Oh yeah, this needs to come up to the top because that goes to the upper module. Maybe we can have that in front here because that goes to this little panel here. So this is going to be our head unit connector to the Pioneer. And this black connector is the one off that adapter harness. So that goes there. And then the brownish one will go to the other harness that came up from where the amp's going to be, or where all those connections are. So I could tuck this wiring back down here in the excess, back down there, snap that together. And this will live back here going into the head unit. Now you see here on the black ISO connector on the harness, the new harness, we have this red wire, and this has to run to a switched power 12 volt. And the best one that there is nearby is the 12 volt off the cigarette lighter. So that would be the green and white striped wire. This black is a ground. So we could T-tap into this to provide power into here so that the radio powers on when the key is on. So I'm gonna get a T-tap, take care of this real quick, and then we'll run this wire to there. And with the T-tap, using a slightly bigger one because it's a different, slightly bigger wire than the ones we used earlier, the red ones. Align it, squeeze it. Now this is gonna run down under here into this space, like this. And I'm gonna strip it, twist it, put in the spade connector for the T-tap, and crimp it. Now that can just slot in here, and it should power on with the cigarette lighter now. This is done. I just have to reconnect this black connector here. That should be everything. Oh, and I can connect this T-tap right here from the signal wires for the amp and antenna onto this T-tap here. There we go. Oh yes, so there is one other thing I want to do down there is I'm going to wedge that module with these foam blocks so it doesn't jiggle around. And that is wedged in there, so I may need to attach it a little differently in the future, but right now it should be pretty secure in there. All right, now let's make the connections under the seat. Okay, so this, we're gonna tip this back and we're gonna work back here. Back here we have some connectors. So we've got, I guess we have to unplug them all. Right here, we've got a power connector on the end. If tilting the seat back doesn't give you quite enough room, removing it completely is a really good option too. I'm gonna undo those. To make this easier, I'm going to make sure that doesn't come down, and I'm going to unscrew the amplifier so we can lift it up and work on it a little better. A little better access. You can see the connectors there. We're going to take off the one on the end with the black and white wire, the green connector, and the gray connector. So I've already disconnected the fiber optic cable here because it was the one that has the least play. We got the gray one. Okay, we've got these out. And drop these back down, and we can look here. This is our green connector. This is our gray connector. And then we also have our piggyback here for the power, and that is this connector here. So one side's gonna go in here, and the other side is gonna go back into the amplifier. So actually, I'll just plug this back into the amp right now. There we go. This can go in here, like that. This isn't going back in, we're just doing this connector here. Snap that in. And then our gray connector right here goes into here. And flip it over. Now we need to be a little strategic about how we put this back in because we need that stuff to clear this bar on the seat. So I'm gonna swing this back into place. Run these wires back there. Swing this back down, connect the fiber optic again. Drop that in place. There we go. This stuff needs to go back here. All this stuff can go back here actually now. Maybe we swing it back down there and we can reconnect or remount the amplifier. It's not going anywhere. Perfect. All this stuff needs to go to the back here between the seat rails. And we have to lower this down carefully. See if that will clear this bar. So this bar is what we're worried about. We don't want to crush any of our connectors now. Let's see. Slowly, slowly. Looks good back here. Let's go check back there. Got all the wires back here. It looks good in there. So we're gonna have a lot of wires to clean up in here, make them look nice and tidy later. But first, we want to connect them to the amp. Now our amplifier is right here. A couple things to do. This is a lot of length for the power wires that lets you run it to wherever you need. I'm gonna keep the full length for now, but later on I'm gonna probably cut them down, or if I can tuck it away, I'll just keep them this length. Then we have our signal wire. We've got our amplifier wake wire, and we've got our subwoofer wires left and right that we're gonna get paired together. Right here we have input, right, left. Right is red, left is black. These are all controls, like our level, bass boost, low pass filter, so you can tune those to your preference. And then we have our remote plug here, which we can add in later. Actually, we could just do that right now. We'll run it later, but it's our little remote. And it connects with this. We have a little jack port here. Oh, it's not the same on both sides, okay. A little thin one on this side. And our big one on this side. So that'll let us adjust subwoofer level. And on the other side, we have some interesting connections to make. I actually have to look at this here, get our correct hex head to loosen and tighten them.
There is an Allen key included with the amp for these screws.
All right, so these are 2mm hex. We'll loosen that. All right, so here we're going to take care of the power. And so that's ground here, our remote wire is in the middle, and our 12 volt is on the outside here. So these three ones here are ground, remote, which is our blue with the white stripe, and 12 volt, which is red. So red, or black, blue, red. Remote wire. 12 volt. Probably connect your 12 volt first because it is live. I'm sure I remembered that. That looks like this. And then we have to do our speaker plus and minus. Now we're pairing up our left and right woofers, so they're going to work together at the same time. And our blue with the white stripe is our ground, and our solid blue is positive. Or negative and positive, yeah. So we'll do our negatives first. Get them together. You might have to peel them back a little further. It is all wired up, so let's see. Leave this here for now. All right, now we're gonna connect this back up. We've got steering wheel controls, plug in, antenna, back here. Got our subwoofer. Left and right, that's everything. And then we just need the main connector. And I guess while I'm at it, I'll put in my wireless CarPlay adapter. The wireless CarPlay adapter is only necessary if you don't have wireless CarPlay and you're built into your head unit. This is just to align it. Okay, let's see. All right, suspension fault because I don't have this center part in. I've reconnected the upper panel and the HVAC module. You guys, okay, that's booting up. That's good. All right, so we have our info screen settings in here. 4x4 info. So we got all this still displayed. That's awesome. Now, one thing I found out while testing this to make sure this worked is that this screen will not work until the HVAC module is plugged in. So just keep that in mind. If you test the head unit and it works, but that's not working, you need to have everything else plugged in. All right, let's pull this back out, and we have a couple more things to run just to plan ahead. I guess I'll pull this out. I just want to point out that I did test the subwoofer. Everything is working properly, which is great. Now let's get this module out because we have a couple more things to route, and we have to rearrange these wires a bit because we have a lot of wiring back here. We want to make sure that it will clear the new head unit. So a couple things. This right here, I'm going to want to have it run under this bar. A little bit of rearranging here with stuff that's going to go up at the top on that side, so I guess it should also run up through here. Now, we want to run this into this area as well, and that's because later on we're going to run a backup camera to the head units. We're going to run this down through here. The same as for the wires on the amplifier side. There we go. Tape this to the wire that comes out in the footwell right here, like that. We're also going to run our microphone while we're there. Going to fish up the microphone connector. I'm going to tape these two to the long zip tie. All right, excellent. Now both of these also have to go behind that bracket here and into this area. The camera is going to go towards the left side here, and then the microphone will go to the right. I'm gonna get the whole harness up here, if I can, yeah, one at a time. And the goal here is that if that's up here, it can pull it forward far enough when to pull the head unit out without taking the whole dash apart if I need to. So I'll try that. I'm gonna run this up into here. Maybe this can tuck back there. This one's a little harder. This is a lot more on it. Okay. All right, hopefully that'll work. So I've gone through, I've wrapped some stuff in fabric tape, including the relay and the steering wheel decoder box, and kind of wedged them down here. Now we got to put this in. So I've also prepped the double bin cage. I pushed in the tabs here so it locks in on this. And now what we're going to do is pull our wires through that need to connect to the head unit. So it's going to be our steering wheel controls, our antenna adapter, our microphone. Okay, well, so I'm gonna screw these in. Because one advantage with this is actually it doesn't clip into the HVAC module, so if we need to, we can take it back out, but we should be able to reassemble everything with this in place. I've also mounted the retainers on the head unit itself. So I'm gonna plug everything in. Backup camera is the video in. Subwoofer. Hopefully the video cable for the backup camera won't take up too much space. Microphone. Steering wheel controls. And the head unit harness itself. Okay. Okay, it'll be a bit of a reach, but it is possible. Now we have to see if it'll actually go all the way in. Not binding up on stuff, and it looks like it's binding up on stuff. Okay. I wish this head unit weren't so big, you know? Alright, let's undo these and see where we're at. Oh, I forgot something. Oh, damn. I forgot the wireless CarPlay adapter. No.
At this point I lost a lot of time trying to find that screw that fell. It turns out it fell near the right mounting bolt of the front seat, which took me a long time to find because I thought it fell into the dash.
Except this time I have a magnetic bit. I want to make sure this goes in right side up. Okay, what's this squishing on? Okay, that's... What this is telling me is get a shallow head unit. It'll be easier. All right, so you want to make sure none of the cables are between the bottom of the cage. You want to make sure they're all above it and going back, and then it can snap in. That's nice and secure. Now let's start putting other things in. Let's, I guess we could put this in. Now, this HVAC panel, it's a little hard to plug in because there's the 3 connectors here and the one there. See right here, there's a slight gap, but that does mean that removing this trim will allow you to remove this panel without removing the HVAC unit now. Whereas the previous one, they kind of slotted together. This no longer does that. Okay, before I put this panel in, I'm gonna make sure this all works. That way, I don't have any bad surprises if it doesn't. Okay, it will say suspension fault, but this is working, and that's working up here too. Let's check for audio. Okay. Now let's double check that CarPlay works. CarPlay and Android Auto. Okay, that is working. Okay, that's working. Now remember, you want that in neutral. That's reverse neutral. I have the wheels chocked. We can drop this in. Alright, so I'm actually gonna start with our 12 volt and the light around it. Then we connect all these. Okay. Drop it down, drop it down. That's all snapped in. I put tape on here because I wanted to protect the plastic, avoid it getting scratched. I'll leave that on for a little longer. So if you're having trouble on the sides, make sure that the side panels over here are in the right position, not catching on the little tabs in here. You get 2 Phillips right here and here. Let's double check again. Okay, that's still working. I actually set this to green earlier when I was testing it to match the green and the dash. Pop this back in. Just go straight in. Maybe I could put it in neutral for a second. Yep, that feels secure. All right, now I can put our trim panel back in. And then in here, the last step is to just snap this in. The bezel piece that comes with this frame. There we go. Let's clean up here. There's a couple more things to do. We got wires to put away in the footwell and some wire cleanup to do under the passenger seat, and we can bolt the passenger seat back in. So I've got my video cable here that I'm just going to tuck out of the way until it's time to install a backup camera. And then I have my microphone right here, which we're going to route up to near the mirror. We're actually going to start from the top, but let's get this open. So there's 2 screws here, one right there and one right there, and these are Phillips. And these are actually captive, so you're just going to loosen it until it drops out, and then we can drop the panel. There we go. That comes down. That means this can get tucked up here. I could even get tucked under the center console as well in there. There's like, the carpet goes over and there's like a little gap. But this should be just fine. Now we can go up to the top. So we're gonna start by positioning the microphone first. We're gonna get some more slack here. We're gonna run this over. Check that we have just about enough length, and we do, okay. So this microphone comes with a little adhesive backing and a little panel here. You can also use a clip to see if that would fit, but I'm just gonna stick it in. First thing I'm gonna do is attach the adhesive that's included. You wanna aim it towards where your face is. Okay, right in this back. Tuck it into the headliner. Ooh, it's gonna be close, huh? Let's see. Run it down the, oh geez. Is that even gonna work? I don't have enough length. So it might have to just be in the left corner. Actually, leave that clipped in, or work the other way. So our goal is to get it to here, but if we can't, we'll see what we can do. So we're gonna run it in this panel here, over here, under this trim, and then go into the door seal here. No, that is not gonna be long enough to go to the center. I should have checked first. Anyway, it's just gonna have to be there. It's kind of what you deal with the included microphone. Sometimes they're long enough, sometimes they're not. I guess Pioneer likes shorter ones. Now if you have a little extra length here, since you work from the bottom, you can tuck this in here, run it in here, and then you can just leave the extra length in the door seal here. And it's all tucked in. And down here we can just pop this back in place. So you can kind of see these screws are, they're not really screws, they're just kind of retainers. See there's like a spiral on it, but it's not a traditional screw. Steps in, there we go, we're done up front. So right here we have a lot of wiring we have to bundle up. So I'm going to figure out how to arrange it, and we're gonna kind of bundle it together and zip or tie it to the other bundle here. It's a little hard to maneuver this. Let's see what we can do. Oh, what a huge bundle. I may shorten these power wires in the future, but right now that is gonna sit here like this. So what I'm gonna do is try to tuck all that in there. I'm gonna wrap it in a couple spots with fabric tape, and then we're gonna zip tie it to the bar under there. This tape is to keep the connectors quiet. Okay. And I'll admit this is a little messy, but I am planning on making a better setup in the future. I'm gonna come back in and make a mounting plate for this amp so that it's off the ground, because you know these trucks have a tendency to, when some seals fail, take on water, and then water sits in the carpet. I don't want to fry this, so in the future I'll be back here. I'm going to reorganize it, but for now it's going to stay in here. So right now it's still going to be pretty accessible, but later on when I get back in, if I shorten any wires or reposition them, I'll probably wrap them completely in black so they're invisible, or almost invisible, and then it'll look cleaner. And then so this doesn't slide around, I'm going to put a little bit of 3M Velcro. So this is temporary, it's just a 3M Velcro so that it doesn't slide around. And when I come back in later, do something more permanent. That way it won't slide. Now since that's done, I'm gonna move the seat forward, bolt it back down, put the plastic covers back on. I probably should have worked on it with it this far forward. This one goes in here. And then we just slot this panel in and this panel in, this covers. Push them straight down. This one slots in and pushes down, and we're all set.
So that wraps up the install. I've been using it for about a week, and so far it's been great. Keeping the information screen is really nice, and the subwoofer amplifier gives you a lot of tuning options. If this video helped you out, don't forget to leave a like. I'll be installing the backup camera in a future video, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. If you have any questions about the install, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.